Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. What if everything you believed about your limits was wrong? What if I told you that the biggest barriers standing between you and your dreams are all in your head? You've been taught to think small, to settle for what's safe, and to accept the boundaries life has handed you. But what if the key to achieving everything you've ever wanted is simply learning how to think beyond those limits? Stick with me, because what you're about to hear is going to change the way you see yourself and your potential forever. By the time we're done, you'll be ready to break free from the constraints holding you back and step into a future bigger than you ever imagined. This isn't just talk. It's about unlocking the power to rewrite your story starting today. Let's dive in. You've been told your whole life that there are limits to what you can achieve. From the moment you were born, the world started drawing boundaries around you. You were told that you could go this far, but no further. Maybe it was the school system, society, or even people close to you who told you to stay in your lane, to stick to what you know, and not to get too big for your boots. But here's the thing. These limits aren't real. They were never real. They were constructed by others and by your own fear. The walls you think are around you are nothing more than the walls of your own mind, and it's time to break them down. For most people, their potential is suffocated by self-imposed limits. You think you can't do something because you've been conditioned to believe it's too difficult, too risky, or too far out of your reach. You've been told that only certain people can achieve extraordinary things, but that's simply not true. Those people didn't have something special you don't. What they had was the willingness to see beyond their perceived limits. They saw possibilities where others saw obstacles. And because of that, they accomplished what most would have deemed impossible. It's easy to believe that your situation, your upbringing, or the resources you have define what you're capable of. But the reality is, all those things are just circumstances. They don't dictate your destiny, you do. When you start seeing your limitations for what they truly are, mental constructs, fears, and doubts, you can begin to release yourself from them. The first step in thinking beyond limits is understanding that there's nothing holding you back except the stories you tell yourself. Think about all the successful people you admire, the ones who've made it big, who've created lasting impact. They're not superhuman. They didn't have an easier path than you. They didn't have magical opportunities that you didn't have access to. What they had was a mindset that pushed them beyond what everyone else thought was possible. They weren't afraid to take risks, make mistakes, and try things that others wouldn't dare to. And they kept going, even when the world told them to stop. That's the difference between those who succeed and those who settle. It's the mindset. It's the refusal to accept the limitations that society places on you, and the courage to keep going no matter how many obstacles get in your way. Now, I'm not saying that the path is going to be easy. There's going to be doubt, fear, and failure. You're going to face moments when the odds are stacked against you, when it feels like the world is telling you to quit. But you have to remember that those are just moments. Those are the tests, the challenges that separate the dreamers from the doers. The ones who push through those moments, who refuse to let temporary circumstances define them, are the ones who break through their limits and achieve greatness. So start today by questioning the limits you've been living by. Ask yourself, what's really stopping me? And then recognize that the only thing standing between you and what you want to accomplish is your willingness to think beyond those boundaries. Your dreams are out there waiting for you to go after them. And it's time to stop letting imaginary walls hold you back. You have the power to break through, but you've got to believe that you can. Once you do, there's nothing you can't achieve. You see, the biggest limits we face in life are not external, they're internal. The walls that hold us back aren't built by society or our circumstances. They're built by the beliefs we carry in our minds. And let me tell you something, those beliefs aren't even true. They're the stories we've told ourselves over time, and the more we tell them, the more we start to believe them. But those stories don't define who you are. They're just limitations that you've accepted because it felt easier than challenging them. It's time to realize that the boundaries you think exist are nothing more than mental constructs. Think about it for a second. Who told you that you couldn't do something because of where you come from, what you have, or who you are? Who told you that your circumstances define your potential? The truth is, you don't need permission from anyone to go after your dreams. Your potential is not defined by your situation. It's defined by the way you choose to think and the actions you're willing to take. So let go of those old beliefs and start questioning the limits you've placed on yourself. As a kid, we dream big. We believe we can be anything. We believe the sky's the limit. But somewhere along the way, someone tells us you can't do that, or that's not realistic. And little by little, we start to shrink our vision, to shrink our belief in ourselves. We start to accept the limits others put on us. But those limits are not facts, they're opinions, projections, and fears passed down from others. And if you're still holding on to them, it's time to let them go. The only limits that exist are the ones you've bought into and are willing to accept. The moment you realize this, truly realize it, is the moment your life begins to change. When you understand that the only limits that matter are the ones you choose to accept, you begin to unlock the power to break free from them. It's not about fighting the world or changing your circumstances. It's about changing the way you think. It's about releasing the hold that fear, doubt, and insecurity have on your mind and embracing the truth. You are limitless. You see, the first step in thinking beyond limits is realizing that they're not real. They're just figments of your imagination. They are fears of what might happen, fears of failure, or fears of the unknown. The more you challenge those fears and push past the discomfort, the more you'll see that the world opens up to you. Every time you face a fear and overcome it, you break down a limit. And soon you'll realize that you've been living a life far smaller than the one you're capable of. When you stop limiting yourself with the stories that others have told you, that's when you begin to step into the person you were meant to be. So the next time you feel that voice in your head telling you that you can't do something, that it's too difficult, or that you're not good enough, I want you to stop and ask yourself, is this really true? Most of the time, the answer will be no. And when you realize that, you can begin to break free. It's time to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself and create a new narrative, one where your limits don't exist and your potential is limitless. You are not defined by your circumstances or the limits others place on you. The only thing that defines you is your willingness to think beyond the boundaries and start believing in the power you have within. If you want to break through the limits you've been living by, you've got to learn how to think big. I'm not talking about thinking in small increments, setting tiny goals that are easy to reach. I'm talking about blowing the lid off what you think is possible, dreaming in such a way that the goals you set feel so big that they scare you. But here's the secret. The bigger your dreams, the bigger your potential. It's not just about thinking big for the sake of it. It's about allowing your vision to stretch to places you never even considered. You need to start dreaming beyond what you think is possible and go after what you never thought you could achieve. Most of us are afraid of thinking too big because we've been conditioned to believe that it's unrealistic, that it's too much of a stretch. But let me tell you this, if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. It's easy to set goals that are comfortable, goals that fit into your current reality. But those aren't the goals that will push you beyond your limits. Those are the goals that keep you stuck in your current state, never allowing you to grow. When you start dreaming big, you start to see opportunities that were once invisible to you. You begin to see solutions, possibilities, and ways to achieve things that you never thought would be available to you. The power of thinking big is that it forces you to think beyond what you know. It forces you to reach beyond your comfort zone. And guess what? That's where the magic happens. If you want to achieve something extraordinary, you've got to think in extraordinary terms. The bigger the goal, the more you have to stretch and grow to meet it. And as you do, you unlock new levels of potential that you never knew existed. Let me put it this way. When you set big dreams, you set a higher standard for yourself. You raise the bar for what you expect of yourself and what you're willing to do to achieve it. And in doing so, you start taking bigger actions. When you think small, you take small steps. But when you think big, you take bold, courageous steps. You start reaching out for things that seemed impossible before. You begin to look at obstacles as challenges that can be overcome, not walls that you can't scale. The bigger your dreams, the more willing you are to step up and do what's necessary to bring them to life. Now, I get it. You're probably thinking, but what if I fail? What if I don't make it? And you know what? That's a valid concern. But here's the thing. Failure is not the enemy. Failure is a part of the process. It's part of reaching those big dreams. Every successful person you know has failed, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's the failures that taught them the most. The key is not to let failure stop you, but to use it as fuel. When you dream big, you give yourself permission to fail forward, and every time you fall, you get back up, knowing that you're one step closer to your big goal. So stop limiting yourself. Stop thinking small. The world is full of opportunities, and your potential is limitless. If you want to achieve something incredible, you've got to start thinking about things you never thought possible. Dream big, take massive action, and keep pushing forward. You have everything inside of you to make it happen. But you have to believe that you're worthy of those big dreams. Once you do, you'll start seeing doors open up and opportunities come your way. It's time to think beyond your limits and step into a future that's far bigger than anything you've imagined. You've heard it before, and I'm going to say it again. Failure is not the enemy. In fact, failure is one of the greatest tools you can use to push beyond your limits. The fear of failure often holds people back from trying, and that fear is what keeps them stuck in their comfort zones. People think that if they fail, they're done. They think that failure means they weren't good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. But here's the truth. Failure is just feedback. It's not a final destination. It's a step along the journey. The only time you truly fail is when you stop trying, when you let fear win. Think about the most successful people you know, the ones who've truly made an impact in the world. Do you think they achieved greatness without falling flat on their faces at some point? Absolutely not. They failed a lot, and yet they kept going. They didn't let failure define them, they let it refine them. Every time they stumbled, they learned something new. Every mistake, every setback was simply a lesson on how to move forward. And that's what allowed them to break through their limits and achieve greatness. When you embrace failure, you begin to see it for what it really is, a teacher. Failure shows you where you need to grow, what you need to improve, and where you've got weaknesses that you can turn into strengths. Instead of letting failure discourage you, use it as a guide to improve. Take a step back and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What's the lesson here? When you approach failure with that mindset, it becomes a powerful tool for personal and professional growth. Every time you fail, you get one step closer to success because you're becoming better, stronger, and wiser. The truth is, the more you fail, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the more you realize that failure isn't something to be feared. In fact, failure becomes part of the process. It's an inevitable part of achieving anything worthwhile. Every success story is filled with moments of failure. But the key difference between those who succeed and those who don't is how they respond to failure. Do you let it knock you down and keep you down? Or do you get back up, learn from the experience, and keep pushing forward? You'll never break through your limits if you're afraid to fail. Failure is the fuel that propels you forward. It's the evidence that you're stretching yourself, that you're taking risks, and that you're not afraid to put yourself out there. The people who succeed aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who use their failures as stepping stones to reach greater heights. So next time you fail, don't beat yourself up. Don't let it stop you. Use it as an opportunity to get better, to adjust your approach, and to keep going. Failure isn't a sign to quit. It's a sign that you're on the right path. The only real failure is quitting. And as long as you keep moving forward, you're winning. Embrace failure, learn from it, and let it guide you to new heights. You'll find that when you do, your limits will start to dissolve and the world will open up in ways you never imagined. You've got to be willing to put in the work. No one, no matter how successful, has ever achieved anything extraordinary without putting in the time, effort, and energy. This is the part where many people start to falter. They get excited about their dreams, their big vision, but when it comes to doing the hard work, they hesitate, they stall, or they quit altogether. You see, thinking big is only part of the equation. Wanting more is just the beginning. It's the work, the grit, and the consistency that turn those dreams into reality. The truth is, success doesn't come from talent alone. It doesn't come from being in the right place at the right time. It comes from relentless dedication to your craft, day in and day out. It's about showing up even when it feels hard, even when it seems like the world isn't noticing. Success doesn't reward people who sit back and wait for things to happen. It rewards the people who get out there, roll up their sleeves, and work for it, no matter how long it takes or how many obstacles get in their way. You have to understand that success is not a quick fix. It's not a shortcut. There are no magic solutions. It's a process. And that process requires sweat, sacrifice, and the willingness to keep going even when the road gets tough. The work is what separates the dreamers from the achievers. It's easy to dream, to talk about what you want, but the real difference is made in the dream. The work is where you prove to yourself that you're serious about your dreams. It's where you push past your limits, not just once, but consistently. You push through the tiredness, the doubt, and the frustration. You keep going, even when things aren't going your way. People love to talk about success, but the truth is that the majority of people are not willing to put in the work necessary to achieve it. They want the results, but they're not prepared to do what it takes to get there. They get discouraged when things don't happen quickly or when they hit a setback. But real success is built on the foundation of perseverance. It's about being willing to keep going when others would have given up. And that doesn't mean just working hard when things are easy. It means showing up when things are hard, when it's inconvenient, when you feel like throwing in the towel. That's when the real work begins. And here's something important to remember. Work doesn't always mean physical labor. It can mean mental work, emotional work, and even spiritual work. It's about pushing yourself in ways that make you grow, that stretch your boundaries, that make you better than you were yesterday. And it's not always glamorous. There are no shortcuts. It's about the long nights, the learning, the failures, and the persistence. If you want to think beyond your limits, you have to be willing to put in the effort every single day, no matter how tough it gets. Success isn't handed to you. It's earned through the work you do. When you put in the time, when you commit to doing what it takes, you'll see results. But don't expect the road to be easy. The more you work, the more you'll grow, and the more you'll realize that you're capable of so much more than you ever thought possible. The work is what transforms you from someone with big dreams to someone who achieves them. The secret is in the doing. Keep working, keep pushing. The results will follow. The key to breaking through your limits is about understanding that growth is a continuous journey, not a destination. Life is constantly changing, and so should you. If you want to go beyond what you thought was possible, you've got to adopt a mindset of continuous growth. People who stay stuck are the ones who stop learning, stop challenging themselves, and stop evolving. But when you make personal growth a lifelong commitment, when you're determined to keep improving, you open the doors to a life of unlimited potential. Now, the first thing you need to understand about growth is that it requires intentionality. It's not something that just happens on its own. You can't expect to wake up one day and suddenly be the person who has achieved everything they've ever dreamed of. No, growth requires constant action, consistent learning, and a desire to become better every single day. It's about setting the bar higher for yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable or overwhelming. But here's the thing, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. Growth happens at the edge of your comfort zone. It's when you push yourself past what feels safe that you start unlocking new layers of your potential. Growth also means taking ownership of your life and your choices. It means being honest with yourself about where you are and where you want to go. If you're not where you want to be right now, it's not about blaming circumstances or other people. It's about taking responsibility for your actions, your mindset, and your decisions. And if you don't like where you are, it's up to you to change it. Growth doesn't just happen because you want it to. It happens because you're willing to do the work, make the sacrifices, and keep pushing forward, even when things get tough. A big part of growth is learning from failure. As I said before, failure isn't something to be afraid of, it's something to embrace. It's your teacher, your guide to becoming better. When you fail, you have an opportunity to learn. You have an opportunity to see what went wrong and adjust your approach. And guess what? That's growth. When you learn from your mistakes, you become wiser, stronger, and more capable. Every failure is an opportunity to refine your skills and improve your approach. And when you have a growth mindset, you don't see setbacks as obstacles. You see them as stepping stones to success. But growth isn't just about learning from mistakes. It's also about constantly challenging yourself to do more, be more, and give more. It's about seeking out opportunities to grow, whether that's through education, experiences, or personal reflection. You've got to keep your mind open to new ideas, perspectives, and ways of thinking. The world is constantly evolving, and if you want to keep growing, you've got to stay open to change. And the beauty of growth is that it never stops. As long as you're alive, there's always room to grow. There's always something new to learn, always a way to become a better version of yourself. And when you commit to that lifelong process of growth, you start to see the world in a completely different way. Your limits start to dissolve, your potential starts to expand, and you realize that the person you thought you were is only a fraction of the person you can become. Growth is the key that unlocks your potential, and as long as you keep growing, you'll keep breaking through limits, shattering barriers, and achieving things you once thought impossible. So embrace the journey, keep evolving, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never imagined.